Hines College, and I welcome you here this afternoon, and thank you for your patience. This is Carnegie Mellon, so we'd like to have a few technical problems in any presentation we do. I'm very pleased to introduce Jessica Jackley, who co-founded Kiva.org, which is the world's first peer-to-peer online micro-lending website. Many of you probably know about it already, but through Kiva, internet users can lend as little as $25 to specific developing world entrepreneurs, and that provides them with capital so that they can start or expand a small business. Kiva's been one of the fastest growing social benefit websites in history, and it's connected hundreds of thousands of people through lending across over 150 countries. Jessica first became aware of the power and dignity of microfinance while she was working in rural East Africa with the nonprofit Village Enterprise Fund on impact evaluation and program development. She's worked for public, nonprofit, and private organizations, including the Stanford Center for Social Innovation, Amazon.com, Potentia Media, the International Foundation, World Vision, and others. The common theme of her work is social change. Her work with Kiva has been featured in a wide array of media and press, including Oprah, and I hope she'll tell you that story, The Today Show, CNN, the BBC, NBC, ABC, PBS, NPR, the Wall Street Journal, The Economist, you get the idea. She speaks widely on microfinance and social entrepreneurship, and she serves as a director on several boards related to micro-enterprise development, including Opportunity International. Jessica holds an MBA from the Stanford Graduate School of Business with certificates in global management and public management, and a BA in philosophy and political science from Bucknell University. Just in case you don't think she has enough to do, she's also a trained yoga instructor, an avid surfer, and a poet. And she just informed me of something that you can all participate in. She has been nominated for Time's Top 100 Most Influential People of 2009. And people like us get to vote for who those 100 are. So we will send the link out to you, and I encourage you to vote. Having Kiva recognized as such an important and influential entity through Jessica is critical, and as she said, you know, it'd be great to be right up there with Britney Spears. So please join me in welcoming Jessica.
Is the microphone on? Are we good to go? Do we have to do anything?
Yeah.
Good? Okay, great. And if you're in the back row and you can hear me, okay, fantastic. Well, thank you very much. It's really nice to be here. It's nice to be home. I travel a whole lot, and so I had a really nice weekend with my family. That's fine. So it's really, really nice. Yeah, my cheering section. So I'm really happy to be here. There's so much to say. Okay, I grew up here. This is my hometown. I grew up actually first in Penn Hills, and then in high school, like last day of 8th grade, we moved to North Hills area, and I went to North Allegheny for high school. And then I went to college at Bucknell and thought I was going to the moon. I thought I was going so far away, and now I travel so much. It seems funny to think that, but when growing up in Penn Hills, our family was a very wonderful, loving, supportive family. I also had a wonderful, very supportive and influential in my life church community at Beulah Presbyterian Church. And I remember as a little kid being in Sunday school classes and learning about the poor, learning about poverty, right? And I don't know if anyone has had this same experience, but I remember very vividly these a handful of just little impressions that I got when I was very young about the poor. And there are a few important things to bring up about that. So number one, I remember hearing things like, the poor will always be with us. There's a scripture that says this, and I remember being totally terrified. Because as I learned what it was to be poor, I was told, well, somebody who's poor needs something. They need food or shelter or something like that, or clothing. And, you know, we just assumed that me, this little like 5 or 6-year-old kid, was in the group of people that was on the side of things to be able to give. I wasn't poor, apparently. I was somebody who was going to be able to give to the poor and to provide those things to people in need. And as I learned something like this, I thought, oh my gosh, I had images of like my little brother nagging me and following me around and never leaving me alone. And I'm thinking like, there are poor people out there, they want something from me and they're never going away. And it scared the heck out of me. I remember that. That was like one impression. I also remember, hopefully it was soon thereafter. Hopefully I wasn't in panic mode for too long. I don't remember. But I remember also learning, that Jesus said, what you do to the least of these, you do to me. And then I thought, whoa, you've got to be kidding me. I'm this like little kid and I can help God. Like there's this big, huge God out there and I can help him. Like that's amazing. Who am I to be able to help? But I guess it's a really important thing to be able to give to somebody who is in need. So from a very young age, I remember these little things, and I remember having, it wasn't love-hate, but it was more of a fascination and intrigue and also a fear of the poor. So I spent many years trying to think about that and figure that out. Another thing that happened, and I think this is a much more common experience, and that's my dad, by the way. Hey, Dad. Hey, be calm. Okay. I remember also, can I be on the stage? Actually, I'm so short, I can't really see anything. Is this fine? I remember also being, I guess I have to be here, seeing images like this, okay? I remember seeing images that were really sad, and they focused on suffering. And again, this was all about the poor and people living far away that needed things. And one of the journeys in my life was supposed to be apparently to figure out how to help and how to contribute. And I really wanted to do that. I wanted to like help out God. I wanted to experience this supernatural thing. And I thought, I feel so lucky, I want to participate in this. But a lot of what I saw, whether it was on a nonprofit brochure or again, something through my church or something like that, a lot of the images that I saw and a lot of the messages that I got were focused on suffering and sadness. And a lot of times when I acted, even in a small way, give $5 or something like that, I acted out of a place of sadness. I acted out of a place of guilt or shame and just feeling really bad. That's what I experienced in terms of interacting with the poor for the first probably 20 years of my life. 18 years. In high school, I actually went with Orchard Hill Church in Wexford. I went on this I went on like a service trip with this group of 12 other students in my senior year of high school to work at an orphanage for a week. Well, this trip, again, a lot of sadness. It brought up a lot of sadness for me because I did get to see a lot of suffering, and I met kids that were my age that were working really, really, really hard every day just to be able to maybe feed themselves. And it didn't even always happen. And it was really hard to wrap my mind around that. How was I this person that got to grow up in this, safe, clean, friendly, middle-class neighborhood outside of Pittsburgh, and I didn't do anything to deserve that. And then here were these people living not that far away. They seemed really similar to me, and they had been just born into different circumstances. It just seemed like life was unfair, and it really bothered me. And I started to kind of freak out about this. And again, a lot of the emotion I felt was sadness. Now, fast forward a bit. As we've mentioned, I went to Bucknell University for school. I studied philosophy and poetry and political science. I studied philosophy because for me, it was this possibility expander. In philosophy classes, I was able to ask questions that I'd never asked before. I never even thought to ask them before. You kind of peel away all of your assumptions and try to figure out, how do you even know what you think you know? And do you really know it? And what does that mean? It was wonderful for me, and a place to really learn to ask the right questions. I think it's a very important thing to be able to do in life. I studied political science because I didn't know what was wrong with the world, but I knew I'd seen pretty much a whole country that I thought things weren't going well there in Haiti. And I thought, well, the government must be responsible for this. They're making the rules. Let's learn the rules and figure out how to fix them. So that's why I studied political science. I studied poetry because it was beautiful and I didn't know how to put my finger on it. But being able to dwell on just a word or a few words or a line of poetry and really find meaning, endless meaning almost, in those words was really good for me. And I have a lot of energy, so it also slowed me down and made me focus, which was a good thing. So that was me in college. Again, we're going to fast forward. I moved to California right after school. I didn't have a plan or a job or anything. I just was in love with this boy who I would eventually marry, so I moved out to California, lived like 3 miles away from him, and tried to find a job. What this looked like, again, this is not prescriptive. I'm not saying this is a good idea to do. This is just my life. This is what happened. I basically happened to live across the street from Stanford's campus. I walked across the street with my resume on day 2 of living there and handed it to anyone that would take it. And my debut at the Stanford Business School, where I would later get my MBA, and then now doing some research there again as well. My debut there was as a temporary administrative assistant for somebody on medical leave. So I show up and I start filing. And that was fine, but not my dream job. But it helped me pay my rent. And it just so happened that I got this temp position in something called the Center for Social Innovation. And that was a research center where basically there's teaching and research and outreach and all sorts of interesting stuff focused on the issues that come up, the ideas that are present at the intersection of business and the social sector. So how do you use business skills and business thinking and all of that discipline to influence social change? It was fascinating to me because I had never taken a business class in my life. I thought, why in the world would I? I want to help people. Business is about making money. Yeah, like why that doesn't mix. But I ended up just getting this job kind of out of the blue and staying there for 3 years. I ended up getting to do a lot of other more interesting things for me, and I stayed there for 3 years. But the best part about it was it got me in an amazing community on Stanford's campus, great school, just like this institution. I would crash classes, like I would be the person sitting like on the steps there in the doorway, like just sitting in if there was room to listen to a lecture that I thought would be interesting. There were speakers every other day. I went and listened to as many of them as I could. I just tried to absorb everything that I could. Anyway, one day I heard this guy named Dr. Muhammad Yunus speak, and who here knows, who does not know who Dr. Yunus is? Okay, great, then I'll explain. So basically, he's somebody that's very well respected. In fact, he won the Nobel Peace Prize in 2006 for his work kind of pioneering modern microfinance. He started an organization called the Grameen Bank in Bangladesh and has done amazing things to help empower the poor through these microfinance tools and products. And just to define terms so we're all on the same page, let's look at microfinance as sort of the big umbrella term. Financial services for the poor. So think of like what you get at your bank, savings, maybe insurance products, loans, whatever. And think of all those little products and services tailored to the needs of somebody living on just a few dollars a day. So that's microfinance. Microcredit, often people use these two words interchangeably, right? But microcredit really just references the small loans product. So that's one little product in a whole suite of things that can be offered. There's actually really, really interesting products, by the way, FYI, if you're interested in this stuff. Like, if I were just starting right now and saying, I want to go do work in something microfinance, microinsurance, super fascinating stuff. Like, what if you're a subsistence farmer and it doesn't rain? What do? Are you just totally screwed? Sorry, pardon the term, but like, are you just in trouble? Or what do? Well, you can get microinsurance products that actually protect against weather and all sorts of things. It's a very, very interesting space, so just throwing that out there. Anyway, back to where it was. It was like the fall of 2003, I go to one of these like many lectures that I just crashed at Stanford Business School, and I hear this guy speak, Muhammad Yunus. This was 3 years before he would even win the Nobel Peace Prize for his work in microfinance. I didn't really know who he was, but I found myself in a moment where it was one of those like lightning bolt, life-changing moments. It actually makes me get shivers a little bit. Like, it was just a full body experience. I heard him speak, and number one, I learned about microfinance, which sounded almost too good to be true. This amazing way of empowering the poor that was based on their own hard work, empowering them not just to hand out, there were metrics you could actually measure it and see if it was working, money would come back, like it kind of fed my type A personality, like I want to see what's working and what's not. But also, the best thing about his story, if anyone's ever heard it, is basically, he talks about how he began this amazing life's work. And here I am, this philosophy major, like not really sure what my skills are, not really sure how to do a job that I feel like I'm really using my gifts, not sure what to do next, and I hear about this amazing man who starts by literally going into a village nearby where he was living and sitting down with a group of women who were basket weavers and hearing their stories and asking them directly about their lives and why they were poor. That's how he starts. And he was a really good listener, and they told him they were poor because they were stuck in cycles of lending that were hard for them to get out of. And he said, well, what if, and they were paying very high interest rates, and basically said, well, what if we gave you a more fair and appropriate loan? And they said, well, that would be great. Obviously, I'm summarizing very quickly, but kind of a magical fairy tale story where he reaches into his pocket and he lends something like $24 or $27 to this village of women. Each of them only take like $1 or $2 in their loan. And over the next few months, like they were paying, and they start to break out of the cycle of poverty, and they are able to improve their lives. It's kind of a magical story. But the best thing was, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I could do that. Like, I can talk to people and listen. I can have good conversations. I want to go try that. So very, very naively, I quit my job at Stanford, and I moved to East Africa for a few months to like do this. I think it would be, I'm like, this would be the coolest thing. I'm young, I should do this. So this is what I do. That is about 2 months into my work in Kenya and Uganda and Tanzania. Where basically, I like begged my way into a job with this nonprofit called Village Enterprise Fund. They don't even do microfinance per se. They don't do loans. They do small grants. So it's enterprise development. It was close enough that they give these $100 grants to individuals to grow or start, more likely start businesses in really rural areas in Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania. So I asked them if I could go hang out with their entrepreneurs and like learn from them and interact with them and listen, be a good listener. And I thought maybe I'll hear something awesome. Maybe I'll be able to do something like Dr. Yunus did. Well, over the 3 months, in fact, a few things did happen. Number one, I was just like blown away by these stories. Not all of them were perfect success stories, but a lot of them actually were. They were almost too, it almost sounded too good to be true, but they're not. You would meet like a goat herder or something who would have been given $100, and he would explain step by step what he did with that money, how he was able to buy more goats, build a fence, get medicine for this one so not all of them got sick, like, I don't know, get a rope for the one that would always run away and tie it down. I don't know. They would just explain this very tiny business growing and explain how now he had income for his family and now he was able to lift himself and his family out of poverty in little ways. And I was blown away. And I heard several of these stories every day. This gentleman, it's just worth saying, this is just one of like 150 stories that I heard. This guy, you can see the water in the background, but he was a fisherman, and he had 3 wives, 30 children, and another handful of people living in his home as well that were from his extended family and had come on hard times. He was supporting all of them. He had a 2nd grade education, 2. He'd received a $100 grant, had purchased like a new fishing net, and was able to feed this huge group of people, and was happy and felt hopeful and felt strong. I mean, just that was enough to be life-changing, and so to like, think of that rapid fire every day, 2 or 3 stories. I didn't even know what to do with myself. I was freaking out. So in the evenings, there I am in a hut somewhere, kind of by myself. I could speak a little bit of Swahili at the time. I'm doing better now, but basically not a lot to do in the evenings there. So I would like obsessively write down every story I could remember. And every few weeks when I'd get to an internet cafe, I would email these guys, friends and family, and say, oh my gosh, you won't believe who I met today. Anyway, that was my life for 3 months. The nature of the stories, as I just described, though, a lot of them were cliffhangers, right? Where you'd hear about this amazing beginning of change, and then what was next for the person. It wasn't clear. So the natural inclination, especially as I'm sharing these with friends and family, was, well, oh my gosh, well, what's next for, Rose, the seamstress? What's next for Elizabeth, the restaurateur? Like, I want to participate in these stories. I want to help do the next thing for them. Well, most of them actually did need, they were ready at this point for a small loan. I didn't see any microfinance institutions around that were going to help them, so the very basic idea that started Kiva, was it 5 years ago, was, hey, it would be great to be able to lend these new friends a little bit of money to let them do the next thing in their lives. It was not rocket science. And I take a lot of time to build up to that, just because I remember what it was like to be in college and maybe not have an exact plan for what I wanted to do, but have sort of a vision for it, sort of a blurry vision of, I want to be out there doing something like this. And I would just say, one of the little lessons is just start, it might look crazy and messy and you might quit jobs and move to Africa or whatever it looks like. Start taking steps toward that thing. Even if you think you're feeling your way in the dark and you're not sure where it's going to lead you, like start to take any step you can in that general direction out there. And a little tiny idea and a little tiny beta round, a little tiny experiment just with friends and family can turn into something very big. So this is spring of '04. Over the next year, I basically, what it felt like was banging my head against the wall for a whole year, because I would bring this idea to all these experts in banking, in microfinance, in nonprofit work, all sorts of things. I would say, hey, what do you think about this? Wouldn't it be cool to lend money to this real person? And they would all say, like, what's that, Peanuts, where the teacher in Peanuts is like, wah, wah, when you never know what she's saying. She's like, wah, wah. Basically, the year was like banging my head against the wall and hearing a bunch of like, wah, wah, wah. Patriot Act, like, wah, wah. Terrorism, like, wah, wah. You should contact the SEC, that might be illegal. Like, just a bunch of scary, big, like, clouds of amorphous feedback that mostly was negative. So it was a hard year. But the good thing is all feedback is valuable, because at very least you can hear how someone else heard your idea and received it. And at best, you might hear something that will actually help you to improve your idea and make it more likely to succeed. So anyway, after a year, spring of '05, I decided, you know what, I still don't totally know if this is legal. I still don't know a lot of things, but like, let's just try this. So basically, went back to Uganda, brought a camera, gave it to my friend Moses, said, hey, let's go find, and then we listed 7 entrepreneurs we kind of kept in touch with over the last year, and said, what do you think? Do they still need a loan? We took their pictures, wrote down their stories. I went back to the US, spammed friends and family and said, hey everybody, we don't have it all figured out, but what do you think? Won't this be fun? Do you want to lend these 7 friends $3,000 total? Money came in almost overnight, sent it to Uganda. In the next 6 months, they basically repaid. Moses was able to go visit them. He could actually use the computer and get to the internet cafe every once in a while, so he wrote about the progress they were making. Here's a picture of the goat, etc. And then, get ready, I'm going to really fast forward. So that was our beta round, March through October of 05. October of 05, we said that worked. Let's take the word beta off of the site. This is real, this is official. And we called Moses and said, let's post up 12 more. Anyway, that began our first year. In the first year, we raised $500,000 in loans. The second year was $15 million. The third year was like 44 or 45, I don't remember exactly. And now it's like up at 67. We do more than $1 million a week in these little $25, $50 bits, loans, from friends and family and their friends and family. And I think it's like 115 countries around the world. This grew. It started with this very tiny idea. So think of that year-over-year growth and how stressed of a person I was over the last few years. But that little idea grew very, very rapidly. And there's a lot to say about how to do that and how to scale, and I'm happy to talk about that. But the big message that if you remember nothing else, the thing that I'd love for you to remember is a tiny idea, a tiny start. It might even look small and silly, and like it's not even going to prove the concept or prove much. But just getting started is so hugely important. And so I am sure everyone in this room has had some sort of idea, a tiny one even like that, and I would just say, you never know what's going to happen, try it out and see where it goes. So that's sort of the year-over-year growth. But even more important than the money, and I'll show you, I'm happy to talk about all the numbers, that's fine. But even more importantly, this is actually my real soapbox. I should stand up here to make this one. Okay, this is the big point too. There are lots of big points that I'd like to make. But basically, all the money going back and forth is fine, but the point was, what really woke me up from Dr. Yunus's talk and also being in East Africa for those 3 months was seeing the poor in a new way. Remember I said all for the first 18, 20 years of my life, it was always talking about the poor and feeling bad and acting out of a place of pity or shame or just panic. That things were so bad and I had to make it better somehow. I interacted with people that were strong, smart, hardworking entrepreneurs that were doing amazing things with only a tiny bit of money. And I realized that I didn't feel bad at all. I felt really excited, in fact privileged and honored to get to be a part of their stories at all and a part of their lives. So suddenly I was operating out of a place of optimism, kind of excitement about it, and that was huge for me. And I know we throw these words around a lot in development work and a lot of nonprofit work about empowerment and hope, but really, I think it's a very big deal to actually focus on those things and to frame the poor and frame another human being in that way versus framing them and seeing them through a lens of suffering and pity and sadness. So a person like this, I used to, if I would see this picture on a nonprofit brochure, I have all those feelings come up and say, oh no, what do they need? This is sad, this is going to be scary or hard. But actually, if you frame the situation a little differently and say, well wait, look at their lives, look at where they are. They're in a marketplace, it's full of activity. That woman in the back is laughing, it's a fun place, good things are happening, she's working. And if you actually just out and out tell people, here's Lizzie, this is her name, she's Elizabeth, she's the first we called Lizzie, here's what she's about, here's her family, here's what she's doing very specific, awesome, interesting things with her business every day, and if she just gets this little bit more money, she'll be able to do the following interesting things. Where's the bad feeling there? Not that you're not allowed to feel bad, I feel bad still a lot about a lot of things in the world. It's a rough place sometimes, but you don't have to focus on that and get paralyzed. Anyway, this is the growth I talked about. That's actually outdated as of a few weeks ago. This was a few days ago, April 6th. So we're just about at 100,000 entrepreneurs that have been helped, that have been provided loans. We're just about at 500,000 users, lenders all over the world. And this is how it works today. It's certainly not, I call up my buddy Moses and say, hey, post another few businesses. That was just in the beginning when nobody would work with us because we were young and had no experience doing anything. But now, people work with us because we're able to connect them with all these wonderful lenders that want to participate. So lenders all over the world come to the website. They see profiles of entrepreneurs that need a small loan. They browse the profiles. They lend $25, $50, whatever $25 amount that they would like to lend to one or many entrepreneurs. We pass that money through to our microfinance institution partners. I may slip into acronyms here. Apologies in advance, but MFIs, microfinance institutions, they're these banks for the poor, like the Grameen banks of the world that Dr. Yunus started. Anyway, we pass the money through to them. They pass it through to the entrepreneur, and they actually are the ones that do the really hard work on the ground of administering the loan, doing training up front, most likely, collecting repayments, maybe even every week, often every 2 or 3 or 4 weeks, really making sure that entrepreneur stays on track and has everything that they need. Now, they do collect the loans, even the Kiva loans, with interest that's fair and appropriate for that area, and just so they can cover their costs. And a lot of them still don't even cover their costs. It's still subsidized in a lot of places, but they do collect interest on average. Interest rates are 30, 35%. They're high, but again, it's expensive work to do, and I'm happy to get into that later if it's interesting. But so the microfinance institution keeps the interest that they collect from that loan, and they just pass back the principal to Kiva, and Kiva just passes along the principal back to lenders. So we don't touch the money as it's coming or going. We don't make interest, and you don't make interest as a lender, but the microfinance institution does to cover their costs and to do whatever they're going to do. Invest in technology, hire new staff, just to do more of what they're doing. And that's why they work with us, right? Because yes, it's fun and interesting, and Moses was in it because it was fun and interesting, and we wanted to just do this interesting social experiment, but that doesn't always work for microfinance institutions. When they're able to source from lenders a free source of debt capital, so 0%, very friendly, flexible debt that actually is quite forgiving too. Lenders take on default risk, so if the borrower, and we've had borrowers just plain old fail in their businesses for various reasons. We've had borrowers have to kind of disappear because they're displaced because of a war or something. Things can happen. Still only like 2-3% of the time that this happens. Most everyone repays, but when it does, lenders take on that risk and they say, no problem, I don't need my money back. That's the way it's going to be. So it's a beautiful source of capital for the microfinance institutions. Anyway, to just go over a few things that I have gotten to learn over the last 3 years. Number one, these things, you might look at them and feel a little bit like yawning. I totally get that, but hang in there with me because there's more than meets the eye to these little cliche, little bullet point, best practices sort of thing. Know your mission. Okay, we all know that, right? What does that really actually mean? So our mission is to connect people through lending to alleviate poverty. So connecting people, that's the what. Through lending, that's kind of the how we do it. And to alleviate poverty, that's one of the reasons why we do it. Now, in my mind, there's sort of this secret mission that I've already hinted at, which is, oh my gosh, we can engage with the poor in a new way, and it's really fun and exciting, and it doesn't feel sad and terrible and desperate and pitiful. It feels exciting. So it's also to allow people to have this new experience of interacting with each other. But anyway, to connect people, that's what it's about. I told you at length the founding story of how we began. So our mission is not, again, what does this mean? Our mission is not, let's just raise a lot of money as quickly as we can for microfinance. It's not the way we think. Think about connecting human beings to each other. It's not, let's build a big, powerful network of microfinance institutions because then we'll have a say in all sorts of things with fundraising and policy. No, that's not the point either. It's interesting because a lot of these things happen indirectly. Other good things happen. But I think only because we've been focused on the mission. So for example, again, it seems like a simple point, but I'm telling you, I think about this like on almost a daily basis about what Keep is doing and how it can make better decisions and be exactly who it's supposed to be in the world, this organization. So basically, example, last year, a company came to Kiva and said, hey, we have $10 million in our corporate social responsibility budget. We'd love to put that through Kiva. We think what you're doing is great. And we're like, oh, well, thank you so much. Now, talk to us about this. So $10 million, what do you mean? Do you want to like divide that among your employees as gift certificates and then have them come to the site and lend? Do you want to like just kind of put it on auto deposit and just like pump it through the system and fund a lot of people who maybe you even didn't read their profiles or anything? Like, what do you want to do? And they basically said the latter. They didn't want to give it to their employees. They just wanted to have it go through the system and come back and be able to kind of check off the CSR, social responsibility box and say, look, we did a good thing in the world. And we said, well, that's great. Happy to point you to, first of all, you can donate that to us as an organization and pay our rent for like the next several decades, or I'm happy to point you to a number of different funds where you could actually invest all that at once, but like what you're describing isn't what we're about, and we turn the money down. Because if we would have allowed them to put that money in, we would have taken opportunities away from like human beings, lenders that would come to the site and otherwise get to read those profiles, learn about another person on the other side of the planet, and have this experience of being connected to them over the course of the loan and slowly get repayments and email updates. Like that's what we're about. So we said no to the money. And we've said no to a lot of different things, a lot of different opportunities, a lot of different sources of funding that wouldn't allow us to do that, to connect human beings to each other. When we say no, I used to really stress about this because things changed so rapidly for us in the last 3.5 years. The first year, you're just like panicked. The startup funding, as I'll show you later, was basically like my student loans and our savings and just anything. We threw anything in the fire because we just want to keep it going and try this dream. So it's hard in a cash-strapped nonprofit to say no to money, but I'm telling you, I feel great being able to say no at this point because it's just the same as saying yes over and over and over again to the thing you've committed to doing. It's the same thing, yes and no are the same if you're just sticking to what you're supposed to be doing in the world and who you are. So that's one lesson. Another lesson is stay open. This may be obvious now, there's like so much open source, crowdsourcing, Web 2.0 stuff, but a lot of companies, and even still a lot of nonprofits, they want to look good, right? And they want to put a polished image out there. They want to only talk about success because it's scary to be vulnerable and say, oh my gosh, it's really hard to do work out in that country. It's like, we don't know how all the rules work exactly. There's corruption. It's really hard. No one wants to say that. They want to be like, oh yes, we do everything perfectly, and that's why you should give us all your money. But what if you think differently? What if you think about being radically transparent and just staying open, and in fact, engaging people in what you're doing? So for example, we have a fellows program. Remember my dream job 5 years ago where I went out to East Africa, interviewed like 150 people and wrote about them? So basically, Kiva Fellows do this. For 10 weeks, you go out to one of our partner institutions, here's my slide. You interview like 150 businesses, entrepreneurs, and then you write about them, you blog about them on the site, you take video, or all sorts of interesting things are happening these days with how that works. But basically, we let other people go see what's happening. When fellows find an error, and once in a while they do, they'll say, oh, it was listed this person got $800, they actually got $700. Or the picture isn't actually of their neighbor by accident, not them, or something. We encourage them to put that on the site. We encourage them to show exactly what they're seeing and to help us improve. They also give us a lot of information on like the soft stuff about our partners, like really how the management is, really how it really is to work there on the ground. It's really hard, it's difficult information to get unless you send someone out that is an unbiased kind of third party. So they're kind of working for Kiva, they're working with us, but they're also there to help empower the microfinance institution. Anyway, that's one example of like including people in the work. Another one is, this is just a screenshot from a while ago. I think we have 400 some volunteer translators who basically have a special login to the Kiva system. They go on and they translate a business posting that may have been posted, yesterday in Swahili from a partner in Kenya, and they translate that in English so that the average lender can go on and read the entrepreneur's posting in English. So we have 400 people that have these little special accounts and go in and like have access to all the data. That can be a scary thing, and I think it is a scary thing for a lot of traditionally minded, how do we kind of say this, old school companies that want to keep everything close to their chest. They want to protect their brand, blah, blah, blah. They want, you want to use their logo, you have to sign 18 forms. We're like, have the logo, put it on a t-shirt, put it on a card, do whatever you feel like doing, enjoy, tell us what happens. We're very open with all sorts of things like this, and this is another example. This is an old Facebook screenshot. All these Kiva things you see, there's so many interesting apps, and there's Kiva Cause, there's all these boxes you can do. A lot of our staff did not design that, volunteers did, or lenders did. And if you want to find these, feel free to friend me, and then you can see them on my site, because I have all of them on there. But basically, a lot of other people do things out in the world, and we say, great, that's awesome. Kiva Friends, this is not designed by staff. You can see under Kiva Friends, it says a community for lenders, by lenders. This is this super active community of lenders that they have opinions on everything. They know what's going on before we do. We go to them for all sorts of stuff, but they've done this. We have not. Again, maybe this is obvious for a lot of tech companies, but I think it's a really different way of thinking for a lot of businesses. Someone made Kivapedia. If you look on the left, under Kiva links, somebody got a Kiva office in Second Life. I've never been on Second Life. I don't even know it, but apparently we have great real estate there. We have great office space. There was an office warming party. We were invited. I didn't have time to go, but someone made Kiva TV. Literally, you can go on this website, kivatv.org, I think, and 24/7 watch every video that's ever, this video may be on there someday, that's ever been made about Kiva. You can do this. Someone else made that. We say, have fun with that. That's great. Thank you. So, being open with our brand has, I think, been a really good thing. Okay, official statement. We do not facilitate or officially support this, but even Kiva lenders will go out. Some of them are so passionate about this. They'll go out and they'll find their borrowers, and then there's videos on YouTube. There's all sorts of crazy things where lenders feel super empowered. They feel ownership of this. like it's their own. They're helping make this a movement, and I think that's such a beautiful thing. It's so much better than having to control it all, right? Let people, give them tools, empower them to go do it and run with it, to create a lending team, right? To do what they're going to do and own it for themselves and define it even for themselves. We released our APIs, so now we also have developers coming on and building all sorts of interesting things. We actually had a Kiva fellow last week say, hey, I want to make an organization that just allows people to buy stuff from Kiva entrepreneurs. And we're like, that sounds great. Let us know how that goes. So again, really, really open with what we're doing. All right, 3 more things. Iterate. What does this mean? In the beginning, it was really scrappy. I spent a lot of time describing that, but really, really funny stories of startup life, right? Like, we had the stream, didn't know what to do next, didn't have any funding. So what do? Well, our logo that we use now, we didn't have any money to hire a designer, but we had a friend that could kind of do some graphic art, and we said, do we own anything that you would like to have in our apartment? And so we gave him an old guitar, and that paid for the logo that we still use today. So I say this because it's kind of funny, and also, I think, especially in excellent institutions like this, it's really easy to get caught up in like, oh, well, we need to really polish 400-page business plan before we can do anything, and we need all this funding before we can really start to work on it. No, get out there, try it, ask your friends, buy them pizza on the weekends and say, help us think through this new feature. Let them sleep on your couch if you can't pay them and they want to work for you, and like feed them every once in a while. Up your student loans. I am not even joking. I really think this is a good idea. I am still paying off the startup funding, but it's worth it. Because when you're a student, you have this really awesome source of debt. I'm just saying. We upped those student loans, we maxed them out, even though I got scholarships and stuff or something. That worked. It gave us funding to be able to like do, I should be careful about saying that openly, shouldn't I? I'm just thinking like, is that actually, well, I don't know if it's like wrong, but that's what we did. Anyway, and now I'm happy to go through our revenue streams today, but we've actually, so this is another thing in terms of iteration. You change, you adapt, you like keep throwing things out there, and if it doesn't work, you don't call it failure. You say it was version 1.0, now this is version 2.0. And you keep trying and you keep improving. You don't have to say try and fail, try and fail. You just can be constantly kind of refining things. Our revenue streams today, we don't pay people in guitars and pizza and stuff, or couches. We actually have salaries and we have a lot of other things that happen. But basically, today we have been able to be a cash flow positive nonprofit because we think like a business wherever it makes sense, and we're always looking for ways to kind of improve what we do. Again, happy to talk about this in Q&A, which I'll get there very quickly. But for example, 70% of our costs in 2007 were covered by just asking lenders to, in addition to their loan, donate a little bit of money on top. Most people say sure, most people put in something. If you're doing more than $100,000 a day, that adds up, and you can pay most of your bills with that. There are also other ways to be creative about what you're doing, be able to get little sources of revenue in a lot of different places, so we do that. And again, those are things that we iterated. We didn't know all that at the beginning. We didn't even know what the competition was to microfinance institutions. We literally kept saying this, so we found it interesting, and nothing worked until we said 0% debt cap. We're like, oh, I guess that's what you want. So just keep trying, keep changing is the theme. For example, this is what you would see. This is a fake screenshot, but in the radical transparency theme, if we had totally messed up everything and like taken the wrong picture, gotten the wrong loan amount, wrong location, this is something like what you would see. And there are a handful of errors that we discovered through fellows or other audits, things like that. And we tell people, we've had, I think, 3 main cases of fraud out of 120 institutions that we've worked with over the last few years. 3 or 4 we've had to shut down other relationships too, but only a handful. And when something goes wrong, what we try to do is tell lenders and tell them as soon as possible and tell them as much as we can legally. It's hard to be in a legal battle sometimes with an institution and share everything, but we say, hey, this is what happened, we're so sorry, you may not get your money back, and this is where we are, this is the truth. And we actually get thank you letters from lenders saying, it's so nice to feel involved, it's so nice to feel like I get the same information that you do. Thank you for telling me the honest truth. I see that this is hard work, and I'm going to lend again. People thank us for being honest. And again, it would be very easy to be, you can see how a lot of other organizations might treat that issue differently. Okay, I guess, why is this in this category? Why is this slide here? Well, sometimes we run out of loans, and I think that's kind of funny and interesting. And again, we could like try to be all, oh, no, we have, this system never fails. It's awesome. We have too many lenders coming to the site wanting to lend their money, and we're trying our best to responsibly grow and scale and find more partners in the field and have them find more entrepreneurs. This is a great problem to have. So we just say it, we tell it like it is. Say, sorry, we ran out, you guys are awesome. Like, chill, slow down a little bit, and we'll put more businesses out as soon as we can. Again, I think being honest, being transparent, and being okay with kind of the growing pains and being where you are, sharing that with people is cool. And we don't feel like this is a failure, right? We feel like this is just where we are right now. Okay, 2 more, and the last one is like 30 seconds. Focus on individuals. This, again, may be obvious, but every person you see on the site is a real person. They need a loan. You see kind of where they are real time. This is not just, a lot of nonprofits will show you that sad picture, and it'll be of some kind of poster child. And they'll say, lend to or give to someone like so-and-so. Here's an example story. Fine, that's fine. I think it's worth it to take the extra time and resources to find every single person. And each story is meaningful and special, and each person is special, and their story is unique. And even if you read the stories of like 40 goat herders in a row, they'll all be different, and they'll be beautiful. And you'll see also changes in the way people improve their lives that have taught me so much about actually what I want and need in my own life. So for example, you'll see people, you'll read about the stories unfolding, and you'll see, okay, this family, they saved up for how many months to be able to afford a lock for the door of their home that is made out of mud and with a thatched roof, because that makes them feel secure. So that family wanted security, and that's what it looked like to them. I would have never thought of that. This family, you also get the things you might expect, like this family sent their girl children to school finally. This family improved their nutrition by, now they have protein in their diet once a week instead of once a month, twice a year or something like that. This family, the children only had 1 change of clothes, now they have 2. This family, now the kids have shoes. This family, things like this always blow me away. In East Africa, I heard a lot of people say, now I can afford to put sugar in my tea and offer my guests sugar in their tea when they come, and I feel like I can be a proud woman and a good hostess now to people. Awesome stuff. So they're really beautiful stories of change, and we want to show all of those details as much as we can. So anyway, here are some entrepreneurs that I've had the privilege of lending to. I think almost all of these I've gotten to lend to. So this is a popcorn seller in Samoa, a butcher in Afghanistan, a vegetable selling group in Kenya, taxi driver in Bulgaria. By the way, FYI, side note, it's a whole other lecture, probably in like psychology or something, which I don't know, but check this out. This guy totally got his loan over, a few days as opposed to a few hours. So it took a longer time for people to fund him than it would take for them to fund this group. And this guy too is kind of in the underdog category, like it takes people a while to fund him. And I think it's so fascinating to try to figure out all of these, like the collective kind of connotations that we bring and prejudices, but also just conceptions that we have about who's poor and who's not, who really needs this and who doesn't. African women get their loans funded 10 times more quickly than Bulgarian men. And it's fascinating, right? You see this guy with lighter skin is standing in front of like a car in a kind of urban looking scene. People don't think, is he really poor? And his loan is a larger loan. Like, does he really need this? And people respond differently. The truth is, he is of how would you say this? Roma culture. So he's the non-PC ways. He's a gypsy and has actually been excluded from a lot of traditional financial institutions where he lives. So he has his own need. And then also this thing too. I mean, if there's a cute kid in the picture and someone has this great smile, they'll get funded pretty quickly. This guy's scowling and like sharpening his knife. Serious, like great guy. I'm proud to be a funder. Took a little while for him to get funded. So it's just interesting. Check yourself when you're there browsing entrepreneurs, because we all bring a lot of like crazy ideas of who's worth funding and why. This is just another interesting case. We work in Iraq, and the security situation is probably not a good idea for her identity to be revealed, because all that money coming in, coming to that one person, and you can see she owns a TV and that sort of thing. Probably not a good idea for everyone to know that, given the instability there. This gentleman, okay, I have to be careful about this because I can talk for a long time in general, but also especially about entrepreneurs. But like, this guy's amazing. If you look him up on site, and all of the 95,000 stories are all still there. You can read about anyone anytime. It's so fun. I do this a lot, as you can tell. It's kind of my thing. He's amazing. So as you can see, he has a visible physical disability, and he has this like mission to go show his village. He can be a successful entrepreneur too, and like this is like a social entrepreneur in his own right, and he shows up on the key site. So you actually find these like fantastic stories of people who have really big visions for what they're going to do in their lives. Anyway, if you would scroll down, I know a lot of you have probably used the site, or I'm hoping. If you would scroll down, you would see, lenders to this business. And I've kind of talked a little bit about why do lenders do this? It's this interesting, sustainable way to be involved in microfinance, to connect with the real person. There are all these reasons lenders get involved. Why do microfinance institutions get involved? I've talked about that too. Free debt capital, awesome. Why do entrepreneurs care? And do they care? Does a borrower care if their money comes from the bank or from this group of people out there? What's the difference? Well, I'm kind of the most touchy-feely person in Kiva. I think I am. It's I love to think that maybe someday every entrepreneur that receives their loan through Kiva can have that same experience. It's wrap our minds around this. Have that same experience of seeing maybe an American, maybe a Canadian, whoever, but seeing someone that they had a predisposed kind of prejudice about, seeing them in a new way too. So maybe that woman in Iraq, maybe she's check it out. Wow, some Americans funded me. Maybe they're not all bad, or I don't know what she's thinking, right? You can imagine how they might see the world in a new way, and how that funding, it's not just about the money, but how that funding comes from a group of people that know her story, that care about what she's doing on the other side of the planet. They're cheering her on, that she's accountable to. There's all sorts of good stuff that can come out of this, I think. And so the learning curve is steep. A lot of our entrepreneurs live in rural areas and don't even have electricity sources. So to explain Kiva is a lot. I mean, this is a very well-educated grouop, and it takes me how long to explain it to you guys? So it's a lot to take in, but how cool would it be if every entrepreneur really got that? That's the end game to me, that everyone really gets that we can interact in a new way with each other. Okay, just start, we can talk about that, but the point is what's your idea? Go start doing it. I don't know how else to say it. Try. Think of the littlest bite-sized thing you could do. Even if it's I'm going to read 10 blogs on this subject every day for the next month. Do that, I don't know. Make yourself a book list, write an essay, do something. Start to figure it out, start to move toward that maybe very vague idea of what you want to do, and start to take the steps. I beg you to do it, because great things in the world can happen when you do it. And to close, and then we'll do Q&A, I know I've said this again and again, but I hope the money with Kiva is great. I'm so excited to be able to say the numbers about how millions of dollars are flowing back and forth, dollars and information, between lenders and entrepreneurs. And I'm very, very excited to think about how entrepreneurs can maybe start to change the way they think about a poor woman in sub-Saharan Africa. Maybe they don't think any longer that, oh, this is a poor person that really needs my help and my charity, and I'm going to swoop in and help. It's fine, there's a place for that. But also maybe they can start to say, whoa, this is my business partner. Strong, smart entrepreneur. And again, maybe on the entrepreneur side, they can, who knows, start to see this collective lender community and feel differently about their place in the world, about their ability to be connected and have a role in the larger world. Really good things can happen, I think. I hope that Kiva can blur those boundaries between, rich and poor. When I was that little kid in Sunday school class, and kind of being told by default, oh yeah, I'm in this category. I'm one of the people that's supposed to give. Fine. But actually, the truth is, we all have need every day, and we all get hungry every day. We need food. We all have need every single day, and we all have something, even if it's something so tiny, maybe even invisible. We all have something that we can offer every day. So I think it's a false dichotomy that we put ourselves in these buckets of rich and poor, strong and weak, have and have not. I mean, the economy today, here's any indication too. Good times come and go. Difficult times economically come and go. We don't live in these static buckets. So the more that Kiva can kind of chip away at that and help blur the lines, blur the boundaries between all those categories I just named, I think it's a really healthy thing for the world. In fact, Kiva is going to launch in the US within the next year, so that will really be awesome, right? I mean, think about that. Think about the subsistence farmer in Tanzania that you loaned to last year, bailing out your college buddy in New York that just lost their job because the economy is crazy. That is the end game. That is what really changes the world. So I think reaching out to another human being, believing more is possible for their life and for your own life, and doing that over and over again, one person at a time, that's what really changes the world, and that's what I care about. So that's my soapbox. Thank you for listening, and I'm happy to take questions.